What's up guys, Kyle here again, and today we're gonna shoot out the Diezel Herbert Mark I with the Mark III. Let's do it! Alright, hope you guys are doing great out there today. If this is your first time here on my channel, my name is Kyle, and what I do is I take awesome high gain amplifiers and I shoot them out. I also review guitars, overdrives, cab speakers, pickups. I record it all with a simple SM57 setup, and I give you guys the unprocessed audio on your end. So if you're into East End or thrash riffs, drop C hardcore riffs, and dudes that can barely speak English, see? You're in the right place. Consider hitting the like button and subscribing on the way out so you don't miss any more of my stuff. Thanks! Alright guys, today it is finally time. This is a highly requested video on my channel. Ever since I got the Herbert Mark III, people have wanted me to shoot out the differences between the Mark I, which has been one of my favorite amps for the last 4 years or so, with the Mark III. And since the Mark III is leaving me here shortly, it is finally time to do that. Now, I am not here to describe all the differences in functionality and the differences in design between the two amps. There are other channels that do that. If you are familiar with my channel, I am just here to see how they compare tonally, and that's exactly what we are gonna do. So we have a lot to go over. I'm gonna go ahead and jump into this demonstration. For the intro clip that you guys just heard, I was using my Gibson Les Paul Studio Faded. I have the Duncan Alpha Omega pickup set in here, and we had a Boss SD1 Super Overdrive on in front of both amplifiers. I'm gonna turn that overdrive off. We're gonna start on channel 2, and we are gonna start in the minus mode. I'm gonna put both EQs all back to noon, including the presence and the deep pots. So with everything at noon on both amps, no overdrives out front, we will start on the Mark I and see what we have. Immediately pretty similar. What I am noticing about the Mark I is that it definitely has more of those sub-low frequencies, and it seems to be maybe just a tad more present in the upper mids overall than the Mark III, but we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna push that gain right up to 11 o'clock on both amps. Kind of the same deal, so let's go ahead and see if we can kind of compensate for that. Let's put the deep knob up on the Mark III a little bit, and let's increase the bass on the channel EQ a little bit. So as you can tell, the Mark I still just seems like it has more of that low-end fullness going on that the Herbert is known for. Again, let's push the bass on the Mark III and the deep a little bit more just to see if we can match the Mark I. So here's the Mark III. And yeah, overall, it seems like they have kind of tamed the low-end frequencies a little bit on the Mark III in comparison to the Mark I. So let's go ahead, we're gonna push that gain right up to 3 o'clock. And this is where this channel starts to get a little bit more saturated, starting with the Mark I. Mark III seems to be a little bit more low mid focus, less upper mid presence. When we have the low end and the deep pushed, it kind of competes in the low end frequencies with the Mark I, but overall, I still think that this one has a little bit more low end frequencies overall. This one seems a little bit more balanced in that the frequencies are a little bit more even and it just kind of sounds maybe a tad bit fuller overall. I'm gonna go ahead and kick in a boost, and let's hear how both of these amps react to that boost in the minus mode on channel 2. Again, similar, but this one just seems to have more of an upper mid presence, whereas the Mark III is a little bit fuller, a little bit more even overall, maybe just a tad darker, I would say, but they're pretty similar. My personal vote goes to the Mark I just because I do like that upper mid presence. Let's take it over to the plus mode because that is probably why most of the people viewing my channel are gonna be here for the belligerent amateur thrash tones. Everything is back at noon on both amps. The boost is turned off and the gains are at 9 o'clock. So let's go ahead and hear how these sound starting with Mark I. Yeah, the Mark I is just overall a lot fuller as it sits now. Let's go ahead and boost that gain up to noon because we want to get right into the very saturated tones on these channels. It's actually really surprising how much less low end that the Mark III has compared to the Mark I. I'm gonna go ahead again and we're gonna boost those tones. I kind of honestly liked the low end of the Mark III a little bit better once I had them dial in because it was a little tighter, it was a little bit less unruly, but if you're going for that huge, massive low end that this Herbert is known for, the Mark I has it in spades. So with the Mark III's low end boosted, let's hear how it compares. Again, the low end between the Mark I and the Mark III are just almost night and day. It's kind of crazy. I'm actually surprised because I do feel like the Mark III has plenty of low end, but the Mark I is just like over the top with all of those low frequencies. So I think they sound decent how they are. I'm gonna go ahead and pull the bass and the depth back a little bit, pull the treble back on the Mark I. We're gonna boost those mids up and maybe get a tad more treble. And then we're basically gonna do the same things, but we're gonna leave the low end as it is on the Mark III. So again, the Mark I is definitely brighter and more aggressive. It's not as balanced in the frequencies. Mark III is fuller. It has more of a low mid emphasis and less of an upper mid spike. So let's see how both of these things react to a boost. I'm going to kick in, instead of the SD1, I'm gonna go ahead and kick in the MXR M77 Overdrive because this seems to add a nice round mid profile to the front of the amps. We're gonna start on the Mark III. So the front end of the Mark I seems to react much more drastically to a boost. It really kind of thinned it out quite a bit, whereas the Mark III kind of stayed fairly full. So I'm gonna get that bass and that low end, or the deep, back up on the Mark I. It's really interesting with the boost out front. I kind of feel like some of the things that I am saying have flipped. I now feel that the Mark III sounds a little bit more forward in the mids, and the Mark I is kind of a little bit void in the midsection. It's got kind of an aggressive upper mid thing going, but the Mark III definitely just sounds kind of rounder and fuller and more present in the mids overall. Huh, yeah, so without a boost, I was preferring the Mark I, but with a boost in front, man, it just really seems to add mids where the Mark III, in my opinion, had a lot of mids missing. It seemed to even out the low mids quite a bit, and I'm kind of digging the Mark III more than the Mark I. Let's play one drop tune riff on this channel, and then we will switch over to channel 3. All right, guys, we are in D standard, and we are starting with the Mark I. Again, pretty much everything that I've been saying kind of stands. I feel like it's a little bit more even once you drop the tunings down a bit. Slight more upper mid aggressiveness to this, slight more hollowness in the low mids. The Mark III is just kind of a little bit more full and balanced overall. Not as spiky in the upper mids, but overall the mids are a little bit more full and it just kind of fills out the frequencies a little bit better in my opinion. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna kick on the mid cut function on both of these amps with the exact same settings. I don't know, in the lower tunings, I think I am kind of leaning towards the aggressiveness of the Mark I overall. It sounds great to me. They both sound really good. We're gonna go over to channel 3. We're gonna get a couple more riffs done, and then we're gonna call it a day. All right, guys, finally we are on channel 3. We are going to start on the Mark III and then move over to the Mark I. The difference in saturation and fullness between channel 3 on these two amps is absolutely ridiculous. Like, the Mark III sounds tiny in comparison with the same settings. Let's see if boosting the gain up to 11 o'clock on both amps helps fill out the Mark III a little bit. Now the Mark III sounds way more mid-forward, but it just sounds tiny in comparison to the Mark I with the same settings. I really feel like maybe Diezel made an effort to kind of balance out the low-end boominess of the Mark I. I've never personally played a Mark II, so I can't comment on how it compares to either of these, but there is a significant low-end difference with the same settings on both amps between the Mark I and the Mark III. Let's go ahead and push that deep and push the bass and see if we can't get that low end thumping a little bit more like the Mark I. But what happens is, because the low end is so present on the Mark I, it really puts the mids back in the signal. So it definitely sounds way more scooped with the same settings than the Mark III does, but I have reduced the bass. Let's see if that kind of evens things out a little bit. So again, the Mark I is just way more aggressive in that top end, a little bit more scooped in the mids and just more full overall. It's also more saturated at the same gain levels. Let's go ahead and put them both at noon. I'm also going to boost the middle on both amps pretty significantly. We're gonna put it up to 30 on the dial. I'm going to reduce some of the presence on the Mark I just because it's like overly aggressive at the moment. We still don't have a boost on. Just kidding, we've had a boost on this entire time and I just don't know what I'm doing. Let's turn the boost off and let's see how it sounds with these settings. I'm going to turn down the treble and I'm going to reduce the gain on the Mark I and see if we can kind of balance these out a little bit. I really do think that the Mark III just sounds smoother overall. the Mark I just has way more low-end frequencies going on. That's really, I think, what it mainly comes down to. The low end just kind of puts the mids back in the mix a little bit more, whereas everything is smoother here, so all the frequencies kind of sit where they need to on the Mark III. Last but not least, we're gonna turn on the SD1 one more time. Okay, so now the Mark III has a little bit more low end. It still is more balanced in the mids. Let's push the low end on the Mark I a little bit. Let's push the mids on the Mark I a little bit. It's really hard for me to pick which one I like better. They both are very similar. Again, the Mark I's just more aggressive. Mark III is just a little bit more smoothed out, and the mids are a little bit better on the Mark III, but I do kind of prefer the aggressiveness of the Mark I, so I'm gonna boost those mids all the way up to see if I can kind of match where they're set on the Mark III. Alright guys, so that is going to do it for me on the Diezel Mark I versus Mark III Herbert shootout. What did you guys think on your end? Which one did you prefer? If you have either of these amps, let me know down in the description which one did you like better coming through the speakers on your end. I'm always curious to see what you guys think, and so is Mav. Mav is curious to know what you think, right? You want to know what they think? Thanks for watching, guys. If you liked the video, hit the like button on the way out and consider subscribing to the channel. We've got a lot more of awesome shootouts coming up very, very soon. If you want to support the channel, down in the description of this video are my Sweetwater affiliate links. You click that link, you get yourself something nice from the fine folks at Sweetwater. I get a little kickback. It costs you nothing extra, and it greatly helps the channel move forward. Or you could consider adding your name to this list of fine people and becoming a member of my Patreon community and supporting the channel that way. I'll love you forever, whether you want me to or not. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Kyle here again. We'll see you next time.